Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2023 edition of the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I'm so excited. It's a brand new year. Very, very much going on in the Bass Chaplain fishing world. We are so delighted that you've chosen to join us again today. I'm sitting here drinking a cup of coffee out of the brand new Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast mug. And it's pretty good coffee too. I'll tell you, it really is. And listen, you can get a mug. We want you to have a mug if you'd like to have one. There are two deals I've got on the mug. All right. One of those is if you want to pay for a mug, they're $10. You can send a donation. I'll send one over here. Or I've got a better deal for you. If you will promise to pray for me every time you drink your coffee out of that mug, I'll send you a mug for the cost of what it sends. It costs to ship it. And we'd love for you to have a mug, and we'd love for you to pray for us. That is the greatest thing that you can do. This is the podcast where we try to connect faith and fishing. It's always been like that. Jesus hung out with fishermen, and we know that he still hangs out with fishermen today. The most important thing that any of us can do in life is to place our faith, and we all place our faith in things all the time, but the most important thing that you can do is place your faith in the person of Jesus Christ. He's got a plan for your life. He's got a destiny for your life, and it's the perfect plan. And we want you to know him, just not know about him. Today's podcast, I'm very excited to have a really good friend of mine, Robbie Digh from Denver, North Carolina, is going to be on the program today. Robbie and I met back when he was on the Bassmaster Elite Series. I believe this year he's going to be fishing the Bassmaster Opens, and he is going to be sharing with us. He has won multiple. Let me tell you, he is a local stud on the fishing circuit. Wins tournaments all the time locally, and we are so excited to have him on the program today. Good friend of mine from Denver, North Carolina. Coming up next on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I have with my guest today, my friend, Robbie Digh. Robbie, how's it going, man?
It's going good, Chris. I'm glad you invited me to come on.
Man, I appreciate you being there. We have been friends for a while. Let me tell you how this friendship started. Now, when you were on the Elite Series, you were coming back from a hunting trip, and it just so happens that I was headed, I think we're going to Guntersville. Was it Guntersville or one of the lakes in Alabama? And I'm very excited because you're one of the few people, I should say, that can actually stand to be in the truck with me for more than an hour. And so I appreciate that. And that really solidifies friendship with me. But I picked you up at the Atlanta airport and we rode to Guntersville together. And I just had an absolute blast that day. And man, we got to be good friends. And I think actually a year or so later, I actually got to go out with you on Guntersville one time. And we had a good time. You know, I learned a lot that day. And I remember you skipping a jig up under a dock and one running out there. And I was like, man, I need to learn how to do that. And all you North Carolina boys, I don't know what it is about guys from North Carolina, but you guys got some hammers in North Carolina. I'm telling you, it's just unbelievable. What is it about the DNA of North Carolinians? You guys can fish, man. I'll tell you.
It's that way everywhere, Chris. It really is. But it seems like there is a lot of guys from this area that have went on to be professional fishermen or fishing bigger tours. There's a lot of people around here that do fish professionally. But going back to, when you picked me up at the airport, I had heard about you before I had even started fishing the elites. And everything I heard about Chris Wells, people were telling me about how great a person he was. And I know you didn't ask for this, but I'm going to tell everybody this because it's true. And, when somebody comes in and starts telling you about somebody, how good a person they are, sometimes I kind of put up a guard a little bit. And because you never know, it's like somebody saying they got a lot of money or whatever, or they're a great fisherman or great golfer. Till you see it, you really don't believe it. And you know, I needed you desperately to pick, or I needed somebody desperately to pick me up at the airport, because I'd done had this trip booked way before I'd even got the invite to do the elites, and I couldn't back out. And had my family and had everything lined up. So I called you and I said, Chris, I need a favor. And I really hadn't met you at this point. I had met you, but it was distant through the crowd at the elites. And I said, Chris, I need a favor. I need you to pick me up at the airport. And without hesitation, you didn't even look at your calendar. You said, just tell me when to be there. And that's, you know, kind of how me and you hit it off from that point forward. You've always been there, and you're always there for a lot of people, for everybody you can be. And I just want to let you know I appreciate that, Chris.
I appreciate that, brother. I tell you, it's an honor and a privilege that God allows me to do what I do. And I really appreciate you saying that. But you got in the truck that day, and you had just come back from Africa. I mean, you were shooting some big game. I mean, some big game. And one of the things that you know, I have all of us who hunt, you know, we always hear all the chatter about, I can't believe that you kill animals and stuff like that. Well, listen, you know, one of the things that people don't realize is the only reason there are any African animals at all is because of hunters in the United States of America. And, you know, if it wasn't for the money that hunters pay to go over there and hunt those animals will be gone. They'd be gone in a heartbeat. And so, but you got a chance to shoot some pretty wild things. And I'm looking behind you right now, and you got what is that? What kind of bear? Is that a black bear, or is that
a black, a colored face, a black bear that killed in Saskatchewan. And
wow,
very, you know, they killed quite a few colored phases, but they're rare. You know, it's not every day you get a colored phase black bear. So, but that was a pretty good size one.
That is, man. If any of those deer that you've got mounted over there walked under my stand, I would have a heart attack, because this year in Kentucky, I missed 2 deer with a rifle that were so close that there's no way possible. And I think old Andy Montgomery said, Chris, you're not a bad deer hunter. You're just a horrible shot. That's all it is to it. So he said,
fever pretty easy.
Yeah. And I got it. I got a lot to work on. Well, man, you've been fishing for a long time, and tell us about your journey in professional bass fishing. How did you get started? Where did it all start for you?
You know, I started back fishing some Jerry Ryan tournaments back in, you know, the early 90s, and had a little bit of success there fishing team trails, and then started fishing some bass invitationals, and then went to FLW, which is now MLF, and fished some of those back, you know, mid 2000s, 2006, 7, 8 through 2010. And then I started fishing a few opens, and I was lucky enough to be in the right spot at the right time when I got an invitation to fish the elites. And I didn't, I started out pretty good the first tournaments or first year, and then I don't know, I gradually lost momentum. And those guys, I don't know, there's fishing locally is very competitive as fishing the elites, but it's when you get out on the elites, it's a little more dog eat dog, you would say. You got to put pretty much your whole life into it. I mean, you got to really concentrate on what's going on all around you all the time, the baits, the line, and sometimes you know, you can put too much emphasis on what's going on around you, but you just got to think fishing all the time. And I didn't do that very well. I lost some interest in it. I wasn't doing that well towards the end, and lost some interest in it. And it's a lot of time on the road. And my career fell short, Chris, from what I wanted it to be, but I wouldn't take nothing for the memories and the friends that I met out there. And I don't look at it as a failure. It was something that, you know, a lot of people want to do that they'll never get a chance to do. So I can say that I've done it, and I was there. And I'm fishing a lot here locally, and I'm fishing, the opens again this year. I fished a couple of them last year, and I actually finished 29th at Hartwell, the last one they had here.
Right. Yeah.
But I enjoyed every minute of it. But it's a young man's game. I think you see some older guys doing it. I think that's all they know. But man, it's a rough life. I really give me a lot more respect for those guys that go out there and can do it for a living, because it's not just about fishing. It's about managing your sponsors and your time on the road, and it's something else. It was really an experience.
Man, I tell you, I have seen guys all the time, and they want to paint this sport as something you just chase that dream and you just go out there and do it. Man, it is a lifestyle, absolute, just encompassing, engulfing lifestyle. I mean, there's some guys out there that are literally, they've got their names on the faces on the lures, all the big sponsor deals. And there's some guys sleeping in their trucks, literally, to have enough money to make it to the next day. It's just quite a diverse field. It is.
Yeah, it is. And it's like I say, your heart's got to be in it. You got to love it, because you're not going to do good all the time, and you got to keep your head up. And I'm probably my worst enemy. You get down on yourself or whatever, but everybody can catch fish, but you got to be consistent and have your mindset. Go out there and compete.
Yeah, it's a hard. I don't know of any other sport where the mental aspects of this game are so important. I mean, it's like you can have the worst day on the water that you've ever had, and one fish, one bite can change your whole perspective. Whereas the lake, 10 minutes ago looked like there's not a fish in this lake. Then you get a bite and you're thinking, oh, I can catch one there. I can catch one there. I've never seen anything like it.
Times that I didn't do that well. I say I didn't do that well. I finished like 75th or 78th. One fish would have put me, in the cut to fish the third day. That's how tight it be. Yeah. And you get down on yourself, and I get back to looking at all that, and I'm like, just a fish here or there would have made a huge difference on how I would have finished. And it's disgusting at some point, but you got to realize it's fishing, and you got to move on with it. And there's other great things. After I got done fishing the lakes, there's great things in the world besides bass fishing. I mean, really, you got to think of that, because you get so tied up in it. You're just like, you just want to break all your rods. You got to say, damn, take some breaths and start over. And I've enjoyed fishing here locally, and fishing some benefit tournaments, and me and my son's been fishing quite a bit, and been enjoying that. So it was a great experience with the leaks, but I'm glad I've done it, and I'm moving on.
Yeah. What about your local lakes? What's your favorite lake locally, and where do you fish the most?
We fish Lake Norman a lot. I mean, it's right here in my backyard, and we went yesterday, and the fish are schooling pretty good here. The birds are on them like they are probably a lot of places, Murray, Hartwell. There's some striper or hybrids mixed in with the spots and white perch. So we caught a array of fish, and we caught them on, Alabama rig, which a lot of people, roll their nose up. So there's not a lot of skill into it, but there actually is. But we're catching them on Alabama rig, small swim baits, bumping a few spoons, catching some white perch, which are great to eat. So, so that's what we fish Wiley some, but our lakes have had a downturn with this bass virus.
Yeah.
Right now, it seems like Lake Norman is the hottest lake here around the Charlotte area.
Right. Yeah. What about let's talk about that largemouth bass virus. I know that Lake Hickory, was inundated with that. And I feel like it's moving down the Catawba chain. And personally, I feel like it's at Lake Watery right now, because Lake Watery is about the worst I've ever seen it in the years that I've been there. My in-laws have a house on Lake Watery, and I probably, the best day of fishing I ever had in my life, I had on Lake Wateree, and that's just a lake that I've fished a lot, and I have never seen it this bad before. And I think it might be because that largemouth bass virus is in the Catawba chain, and I think it might be coming down. And so,
Chris, all lakes take a turn for the worse, and they go in cycles, they say, but Lake Hickory was it's like Watery. It was full of 4 and 5, 6 pound bass. I mean, slam full. And it's like pulling teeth to even go up there and catch a limit. And it's frustrating, with the DNR and everybody. It's like some of our lakes get overlooked sometimes. I don't know. They say, we'll follow the science. We'll do a study on it. Well, I mean, that study takes 5 or 6 years. The fishermen, they want something done, right away if we can. Let's put some fish in our lakes. And I think all the studies that are done, we got great DNR. They're all strapped. It's all about money. We can only do so much because we only got so much tax money. But I think all our lakes, the pressure has got to them, Chris. And I think all our lakes need stockings every year to a certain point. I mean, they've done it at Santee before, and it's helped there. But it's a frustrating situation to have a great lake like Lake Hickory and the fishing just be so sorry. I mean, it is terrible there. I fished it for many years, and you can go up there during bedding season now, and you're lucky to see a dozen fish over 4 pounds.
Wow. It's really getting like that towards Watery, which begs the question, is it going to move on down and go to the Santee Cooper, lakes eventually? And I would hate to see that. But there's really nothing you can do about it. It just has to, like you said, it's in cycles, and it's just got to run its course. But it is. It's a tough time. But they've got, a lot of times, like right now at Watery, they've got it drawn down. I don't know how many feet it's drawn down, but I've never seen it this low in my lifetime. And even the cove that my in-laws' house is in, the back of it's totally dry. You can walk across the entire lake. But that always seems to help a lake eventually. When they draw it down and things build up. And so I think, it'll definitely take an upswing, coming up. But
get some bank growth.
Yeah. I remember when they drew Hartwell down a few years ago, and man, after that, it was just it was just gangbusters afterwards. And it was so much fun to be able to do that. But I love it. I really do. Let me ask you this question. So, in your fishing, I noticed a while back, didn't you just win like a team tournament or something like that? You guys, you fish a lot of team tournaments.
Well, I do with my son. And there's a lot of great team tournaments here in North South Carolina, even Georgia. I don't know about some of the other states, but man, we won a chunk of change and fishing the Special Olympics, and we also fished some Angler's Choice tournaments that pay pretty good. But I think we fished 3 weekends in a row here, and we won like 15 grand, maybe a little bit over.
Wow.
So team tournaments is the way to go, in my opinion, for the local angler that, you want to win some money and keep your expenses at a minimum.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of good team tournaments in the Southeast right now to fish.
There really are. And, fishing with your son has got to be one of the greatest things. And that's just, I hear it from guys over and over. My dad used to take me fishing. That's how I got started. And you hear that story, that testimony of people, how did you start fishing? Well, I started with my dad. I started, fishing with my dad. And, I watch, Andy Montgomery's got his nephew, Aiden, who's going to be a hammer, by the way. He's already a hammer, and he said the other day, he said, well, I had to move to the back of the boat. Aiden took over the front of the boat. And so it seems like that's kind of the progression of how you get your kid interested in fishing is just take them and fish tournaments and things like that. So I know I like fishing with my son, Wesley, who is 20 years old today, by the way. Happy birthday, Wesley. And so it doesn't seem like it's been 20 years, but wow. But man, listen, and on the Elite Series, I know when I had my Christian Angler meetings, I knew that you were always going to be there. And so faith plays a big part in your life. Tell us about your faith journey. How does faith affect your life, man?
It's kind of like, Chris, if you go through I was thinking about if you go through any bad times or you have a difficult day, that's when I lean on my faith the most, Chris. Even when you have a bad tournament, you see some people that they're not very happy people, and a lot of times they're not faithful people. They don't know Jesus Christ, and I try to put my faith in position that I can lean on it, and it makes my life so much better and easier by knowing Jesus Christ. If I have a bad day on the water, or I'm having a bad day at work, or what have you, and I've been going to church since I was knee high to a grasshopper,
Right.
and
Yeah.
my mama, thank God for her. She drug me to church. I say that because when I'm 7, 8 years old, I'm not wanting to go to church every
Right.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I was in the choir. So when we went on Sunday nights, I would have to stay over. So a lot of times I wouldn't get home on Sunday nights till 8, 8:30 because choir went up. And I'm like, Mama, I don't want to have to go on Sunday night too, Yeah. So it's you look back as you get older, and you look at how right your parents was, and just thankful for my mother and my father for introducing me to Jesus Christ and to the church. So
that's awesome. What a testimony to say. You hit the nail on the head when you said knowing him. There are a lot of people in the world that know all about Jesus. We hear the story all the time, especially at Christmas time. We hear, Jesus, stuff like that. But when you come to know him personally, when you cross from death to life, that's all the difference in the world. It makes all the differences when faith becomes real in your life. And I've seen you walk that faith, man.
And you know it when you got it. I mean, it's like I say, it's you always know Jesus, and he's always with you, but it's so important to have him in your life. If you have any troubles, you get sick, and that's a lot of times when people call on the Lord, that's the only time, and that don't need to be the only time. But it's so much easier to get through your troubles if you know Jesus Christ. That's what I'm trying to say, Chris. And it's and you've seen it. It's and you've had your own troubles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
without Jesus, where would you be?
That's right. That's exactly
it would be
right.
shambles. And you've come through it, and it's just you're better. You're a great person, but I'm sure you've got stronger.
It really is. The Bible says that the testing of our faith and the trials that we have, produce a perseverance in us. And when you look back on it, I can look at all the things that happened in my life. I lost a sister that was 24, a brother that was 36, mom and dad, all in about a 10-year period. And I went from being like a middle child to being an only child. And when I was going through it, it was no fun. The same thing as going through the death of my wife. It was no fun. But even when you come through it, you can see how God has used things, and he will continue to use things. And he's already allowing me to minister to people who have lost their spouse and lost their brothers and sisters. And so you're exactly right. Knowing about Jesus doesn't help you. It helps you initially when you say, hey, I know he exists and everything. But when you give your life to him, when he comes into your life, you repent of your sin and you trust him, that's when that relationship begins. And that's when you can understand that even when you're going through these things, he doesn't keep you from going through them, but he walks with you through them. And the testimony of that is evident. And man, I appreciate that. I appreciate that word. I really do.
Got a plan for all of us. And that's kind of the way that, I looked at my Elite Series career, if you call it. It wasn't it was a plan for God for me to go, but it wasn't his plan for me to stay. So, and it was really a blessing now that I'm looking back, because sometimes you don't understand his plan, you know? So it's been 2 years since I fished the leaks, but I've come back and I've been fishing with my son, and it's been such a blessing because I didn't have time to fish with him when I was on the leaks. People don't realize, you're gone all the time. You're on the road. So come back and fish with him and mentor him some. And he's a great fisherman. He won the BFL North Carolina points this year. Not that I showed him some stuff, but he's really took off from what I've showed him. He's starting to show me stuff. And it's been a blessing to see him grow and be able to fish with him and enjoy that. So it's been awesome.
That is. Well, let me ask you, let's move over here, and I want you to give us some tips. What would you say to an angler, just an average guy who wants to get better in their fishing? Can you give us 2 or 3 things that say, hey, listen, if I were you, this is what I'd concentrate on?
If I was trying to, if you're going to try to be a professional fisherman, first thing you need to do is fish some co-angler stuff, sign up for the MLS or the opens. They don't call them the Costa now. It's the Phoenix, not Phoenix. Gosh, I'm trying to think what it is. Used to be the Costa, but it's the MLF, say the old Costa.
Yeah.
It's in between the Tackle Warehouse and the Phoenix Bass Fishing League. I can't even remember the name of it. They changed the name so much, but sign up for some co-angling stuff and fish a couple years. It's hard to, because everybody thinks they're ready, and you're not. You need to fish at least 2 years, if not 3 years, out of the back of the boat and learn everything you can from different people, and then move up to the front of the boat. And if you can't win locally, you definitely can't win on the road. So you need to be able to win a tournament or 2 locally before you get out here and travel. But Chris, the younger guys nowadays are such great fishermen, and they're getting a lot of it from co-angling and from the internet, because all that stuff's at their fingertips. Where when me and you were coming up, look how many secrets there was about how to fish the horny toad. I know you love the horny toad fish, but we didn't know how to really fish a horny toad, in these parts, and we didn't know they would bite it, but they'll eat it. I mean, I know guys that fish it on Lake Norman religiously, and they fish it under the water. They never wind it on top. That's a big deal up here, is fishing a horny toad under the water. But to get those experiences, you have to fish with different people, fish with as many different people as you can, watch the internet, and fish some co-angling stuff. And once you do that, if your heart's into it, you'll be one of the best fishermen there is. I don't think there's anybody that can't be a professional fisherman if they watch all the stuff that's out there and follow all the guidelines, the co-angling, and just study it. It's like being a professor. Anybody can be a professor. You just got to study it. And if you study it, you'll be a professional fisherman. Now, I ain't gonna say you'll be the best, but you'll be one.
Right. Yeah. That's good stuff. The amount of information that we have now is stunning. I mean, it's stunning how you can go back, and even just the history of tournaments. You can go back now, and that used to be kind of an ace in the hole for me, because I would keep every Bassmaster magazine that I ever got, and I would write down who won the tournament and what they won it on. But I would go down for the 2, 3, and 4 guys, and people love. I'll give you for instance. Got a buddy of mine who used to own a tackle store. His name's Tommy. And he said, man, I had these Strike King red eye shad on my shelf for 5 years and nobody ever bought them. He said the day that Kevin Van Dam won the classic on that thing, he said the next day they were lined out the door to buy that red eye shad. And he said, if I'd have known that, I'd have marked them up. But he said they were all buying it. But the point is, people love to learn what the winner won the moment. They don't look at the 2, 3, 4 guys that finished up in the top. And that's what I used to do. I used to write those things down. You know, I remember one time David Fritz finished like third on Santee, and one of the things, it was Larry Nixon, and he was throwing a yellow floating worm. Everybody saw what Fritz, won it on, and nobody saw what Larry Nixon was. And I was like, man, that's a fish catching machine. But now with the internet, you can see everything. I mean, there are no more secrets.
Yeah, secrets, and I fish with some pretty good fishermen, and they're all the time like trying these new baits. Just these little knick-knack stuff. They're all the time trying this new technique or something. But we pretty much know all the techniques. And Roland Martin told me this. We all pretty much know the baits. It's all about technique, about how you fish a rubber worm, about how you fish the horny toad. Like I say, some guys fish it on top, some guys fish it under the water. You might put a sinker on it. It's all about that little technique. And these guys I'm talking about that are really good, that's what they try to do. They try to fine tune that technique, because that's all we got left. It's not about baits. When they come out, they're all over the place. People are selling them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's about how you wind your crankbait, how you jerk your jerkbait, what pound line you fish it on, what kind of rod. And that's how a lot of the fish are being caught now, because there's so much pressure and the fishermen are so good. It's all about technique.
Man, I tell you, pressure is really a concern. I know when you look on the internet, people have all kind of opinions about what to do about pressure. Should we limit tournaments, how many tournaments on a lake and things like that? But it's all a part of the cost of growing the sport. And, you're right. How you fish the bait is important as what you throw. And that's one thing I've learned watching guys over the years is there's so many different ways to fish things that I never thought about, and tweaking baits and things like that. And I don't hardly ever see a pro that doesn't modify a bait in some way. They very rarely take that out of the box and just throw it just like it is in the box. There's going to be either a change the hooks, paint it, twist it, whatever it is. And so you're exactly right. But that's awesome. Rob, this has been an awesome time, man. I've learned a lot already. I appreciate you joining with me today. And man, I hope that we're going to get a chance to go fishing together pretty soon. I'd like to do that, man. I'd like for you to take me.
We don't need to go today because I don't know what comes through your house, bud, but it's been pretty nasty here.
I think we probably got 6 inches of rain this morning. I thought my house was going to float off the pad, and hopefully but we need that rain, and I'm glad we're getting it now. And I'll look forward. All that rain will benefit us down into spring. And so when it comes down to everything getting right, but Rob, I appreciate you being my guest today, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for having me on, and God bless you, man.
All right. And let me tell you something, folks. This is the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Hope you'll join us next week. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, we'd be delighted for you to do that. And don't forget, if you'll pray for me on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast mug, I will send you one. And this is Chris Wells for the podcast signing off. We'll see you next time.